Okay, good morning again, everyone. My name is Jeff Hamlin. I'm the Director of Learning and Development here at the Climate Corporation. And thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today, where we're going to just go over what you get with a Climate FieldView Plus account. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time actually going through the details of how you push the buttons to use the features. This is more just to help everyone understand what are the features that you get access to. And I do other webinars that dive in more detail on how you really use those features to their full, performance and get the most out of those features. But today, really just a quick overview to show you what you get access to for those of you who may be considering signing up for a Climate FieldView Plus account here in the 2019 season. Couple of things before we get started. I have muted all the phone lines to keep the background noise down, but as always, the most important thing that I can do on these calls is to answer your questions. So if you do have questions about anything, please use the chat or the question and answer functionality on the right-hand side of the screen to type those questions in, and I'll make sure that I get to them either along the way or when we get to the end of today's presentation. That's probably about it. So let's just go ahead and jump in. I've got a couple of slides, and then we're going to actually spend some time in our apps looking at actual examples of these features that we want to talk about today. So the first thing I'll cover is just, what do you get with FieldView Plus? A quick overview of the list of features. And it's listed here in the middle of this screen in the red box, where the features that you're going to get when you upgrade to a Plus subscription, as opposed to our free Climate FieldView Prime subscription, is you'll get access to yield analysis, field region reports, field health imagery, those are satellite images of your field, manual seed and fertility scripting tools, the ability to do split screen visualization, remote view, and one that's not listed on here are some of the new analysis tools that we have added to the Climate FieldView CAB app, so I'll show you those as well. So that's just a quick overview of listing of what they are. We'll go and look at each of those features here in just a minute. But the other important thing to know about the FieldView Plus option is that we are currently offering a try it before you buy it program, where anyone can get 1 year of FieldView Plus and a FieldView Drive starter kit. So we will send you in the mail a drive, the iPad mount for it, the RAM mount for the cab, all the power cords that you need to power the iPad in the cab. Everything except the iPad, we'll send all that to you for free to use for a year, as long as you sign up anytime between June 25th of 2018 and August 31st of 2019, and you have never had Plus before, or you used Plus before and it's been more than 24 months since you have paid for that service. So it is something, everything that I'm going to show you today, you can try for free if you are in the U.S. or Canada. A good way to check it out and see if it is something that might benefit your farming operation at no risk to you. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of how this Plus is working this year. That said, let's go ahead and jump into the product demonstration. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my iPad, and so you can see that. And let me just make sure that's working properly here. Okay, that should work. And share. You should, in a second here, be able to see my iPad on your screen. And I am logged into my Climate FieldView account using the Climate FieldView Black app. And let's go ahead and start talking about some of the Climate FieldView Plus features. So one of the first ones to talk about is field health images. And you can see that is one of the dashboard tabs here on my dashboard, where if I go ahead and click on field health, what it does is it shows me the most recent satellite image that has been taken on each of the fields in my operation. And one of the features of Climate FieldView Plus is you are going to get access to satellite imagery of all your fields from about April 1st until about October 31st each season. And what does this mean in terms of how frequently we'll get those images and what their resolution is and some of those kind of things? Well, we don't own the satellites that we work with to provide these images. We contract with a number of third-party satellite companies to buy images from them. And so we can't guarantee the frequency with which you will get these images, but you'll get them whenever the satellite passes over your field on a cloud-free day, and we can go ahead and capture a picture that shows you that top-down view of what kind of biomass you have in the field and where the better and worse performing parts of your field might be. So this is kind of like your treasure map to scouting, and the cool thing about it is we can't be in all of our fields every day, and it's hard to see what's going on in the field, especially once corn gets 4, 5, 6 feet tall. What's going on in the middle of those fields, and this is that top-down view that allows us to see what's happening in the field before we get in the combine and harvest. And let me just quickly show you a couple examples of this, and I'll try this field here because I know this one has kind of an interesting story to it. But basically, when I click on a field, I'll see all the images that have been taken on that field going down the left-hand side of the page. And as I look through those images, you can kind of see the frequency with which the images came last year. If we look at this here, you can see I have an image on May 28th, and then I have one 4 days later on June 2nd. Then there was a 9-day gap to June 11th. Then a 1-day gap to June 12th, a 15-day gap to June 27th, a 5-day gap to July 2nd, a 5-day gap to July 7th, a 2-day gap to July 9th, a 1-day gap to July 10th, and so on. So, we can't guarantee the frequency with which the images are going to come. It depends on cloud cover in your area, but you might get them every day or two, and then there might be a 10-day gap sometimes if you're going through a cloudy period. But this kind of gives you an example of what you might expect in terms of frequency of images where you farm. Now, what can you do with these images? Again, this is kind of an interesting story here because of what happened in this particular field. These images are, again, your treasure map to scouting, and you probably know your fields pretty well. And you know where the good spots are and the bad spots, and you know where that sandy ridge is and where that depression is, that if it does rain a lot, you're going to get standing water in the field. And so when I look at these images starting, say, let's look at this July 9th image, this field has a particular pattern that the farmer probably knows pretty well. He can explain most of those good and bad biomass areas in that field. And if I look at the image that was taken the next day on July 10th, you'll see it's fairly similar. And then on July 12th, we're getting similar patterns moving through this field through the year. And as you can also see on the left-hand side of the page, with each image, I also get some information about how much rain has fallen season to date on that field as of the time of that image that was taken, what percentage of the field is in a low biomass condition. So basically what percentage of that field is abnormally low compared to the field average. It helps us understand, how big some of our problems might be. And then we also get a GDU count that shows us, if it's a cornfield, how many growing degree units have occurred since planting in that field, so we can help kind of track progress as the season goes along. But as you can see, July 12th, July 15th, fairly similar. I'm going to skip the July 20th image for a minute, but July 22nd, something fairly similar. July 24th, the pattern is fairly similar. And then all of a sudden here on August 1st, the pattern changes pretty distinctly. And we get some signals in the northern half of this field indicating that we've suffered some biomass changes in that northern half of the field. July 24th, everything looked pretty good. August 1st, all of a sudden, 7 days later, things didn't look so good in the northern half of the field. And then 2 days later on August 3rd, that problem still exists and it's getting worse. August 11th, 8 days later, it still exists and it's getting worse. August 12th, it still exists and it's, continues to be bad. So what happened here? Well, this is an interesting example where somewhere between July 24th and August 1st, this field was hit with hail. And we can start to see that impact of hail immediately in these images because we'll see the color change in the field. And so from a top-down perspective, we can immediately tell how much of the field was impacted by hail. Now, what can we do with this information? Well, we're probably going to call our crop adjuster, and he's going to go out and look at this field and try and determine what kind of appropriate hail settlement I might be receiving on my hail policy. And, maybe the settlement I get from him is pretty good. I feel it's pretty fair. Or maybe it's not. Maybe he comes back with a number that I don't think is representative because I have this information at my fingertips. And so what I can do then is I can come in here and say, you know what? I have the images from the field that show exactly the area that was impacted because I can see on July 24th, everything looked fine. And here on August 11th, I can see pretty distinctly the parts of the field that were impacted by hail where my biomass has dropped quite a bit. And then I can even use tools in Climate to go ahead and outline that and say, you know what, we can see this from above. I don't need, I know you walked it, Mr. Crop Adjuster, but I have a picture here that basically shows me the areas of the field that were impacted, and I can outline this as precisely as I want, and our system will even tell you how many acres were impacted. And we can see here in this report that 45 acres were impacted in that hail event. And I can use this to help have that conversation with my crop adjuster or do whatever else it is that I need to do with these images that I'm getting of my field. So that's one of the things to be aware of is these field health images. They are your treasure map to scouting. There's a lot of cool ways that they can be used. And again, they'll come whenever we can get a cloud-free image of that field. It might be every 2 days. It might be 10-day gaps at times. And these images are all of about 5-meter resolution is the resolution that we're providing you with in these images. One other thing I'll note, just because you probably saw it on the left-hand side of the page, sometimes images will come through that look like this, or like this one here on August 6th, where we don't get the full field coming through in the image. This is because of clouds. Sometimes clouds impact part of the field, and we want to go ahead and pull that part of the field out so that the clouds don't have a negative impact on the color scheme and give you a false signal in the image that is provided to you. So we'll try and cut those parts of the field out and serve you what was the parts of the field that weren't covered by clouds. This is not a 100% science, but we allow you to look at the actual picture that was taken that day to see how clouds might have been impacting it. And if I click on this True Color button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, it's going to show me the satellite picture that was taken that day. And you can see that, in fact, there were clouds over the field when the satellite passed. And, in fact, there were some cloud shadows as well that were causing some signals in the field to show through. So that's what it means when sometimes you get these pictures of your fields where part of the field has been cut out. That's us trying to deal with some of the cloud issues and still give you some information even on those cloudy days. Okay, so that's about all I'll say about field health images, hopefully a useful tool. And again, you get these for every acre that you choose to map as part of your Climate FieldView Plus subscription. So whether you farm 500 acres or 50,000 acres, you will get images for every field that you farm. The next thing I want to talk about is yield analysis. So one of the other really cool and powerful tools that comes with the FieldView Plus subscription is yield analysis. And you can see the yield analysis tab here on the right-hand side of my page. So if I click into yield analysis, I'm going to switch back to a different year and crop type where I have a little bit more data here. I'm going to look at my 2015 corn data. And what happens here is by using the FieldView Plus system, as you combine, the data is going to automatically flow to every iPad and iPhone that you have chosen to share your data with. Now, you as the farmer are always in control. You have the choice of who gets to see your data, but there's a lot of reasons why you might want to share your data with other people. You might want to share it with, your agronomist, with your crop scout, with your, whoever it is that your brother-in-law, your landlord, whoever it is that you're working with in your operation. Let me actually switch this. I'm in the wrong operation, get to one that has a lot more data here. And so as you harvest, a number is going to just show up on this page automatically on everyone's phone to let everyone know in real time what those fields are yielding. So this isn't super rocket science, but it does help us understand that, hey, as the season's going along, if I'm not the one running the combine, I can always pull out my phone and see in real time how much each field is making as the combines roll through those fields. So here's the data on this page showing me what each of these fields made in terms of yield. I have that little orange line that shows me my full farm average, and I can quickly see which fields are above and below average. Other cool parts of this report are I can look at this report on a hybrid by hybrid basis, because I may have 10, 15 different hybrids that I planted on my farm this year, and I want to see which ones perform best. Well, I don't have to do any of that pulling up thumb drives from the monitor or sitting down at a computer and trying to generate a report. These reports get generated automatically by me just getting in the combine and harvesting. And as you'll see, if I click on the hybrids tab at the top of the page, I can now see what my best through my worst performing hybrids were on my farm in aggregate across all the acres where they were planted. And this kind of information comes in really helpful as we're trying to take advantage of early seed purchase deadlines and determine what were the good numbers on our farm, what were the not so good numbers, and what we want to do more and less of going forward. because too often this kind of analysis doesn't happen until after seed purchase for the next year has already been completed, or it never gets done at all. And the nice thing with our system is it happens automatically by you just getting in the combine and harvesting. So as we can see here, I'll sort this by the harvested acres. I can quickly see that, hey, my most popular hybrid was this DeKalb 6277, and it was planted on 493 acres, and it made 243 bushels, which beat my farm average by 5 bushels an acre. So that's probably a hybrid I want to continue to plant a lot of next year. My next hybrid, 6208, was my second most popular. I planted it on 422 acres, but it only made 232 bushels on average, which was 6 bushels below the farm average. So that's probably a hybrid I want to look at more closely before I put in a whole lot more acres next year, because it didn't make the farm average, and it was something that I put on a lot of field. And so on and so forth down the list. I can see how each hybrid performed across all the acres where it was planted. And now this summary here doesn't always tell the whole story. We may want to look deeper here. So if I want to look at that 6208 and say, okay, it didn't meet the farm average, and I planted it on a lot of acres, so let's look at that in more detail. I can click through this and look deeper and say, okay, what were the fields where it was planted? And I can see how it performed on each of those fields. And I can quickly understand here that, hey, this is not a bad hybrid. It performed really well on Home Place 1 and Fred South Small and Dave's and Home Place 2. It made good numbers in those fields. The average just really got dragged down by the Green Valley field and the Clem South Gunderson field. And so now I use this data in combination with my personal knowledge about this field to be able to say, you know what, maybe that Green Valley is a really tough piece of dirt, and it's something that, hey, the fact that it made 205, that's a good performance. So I shouldn't penalize this hybrid because I happen to put it in one of my tougher pieces of dirt, and so it had to work hard to put up a decent number. Or maybe I know that Clem South Gunderson got hit with hail this last year, and so that 224 is an abnormally low number driven by an act of God through Mother Nature. And so again, let's not penalize the hybrid for that number. But the combination of these reports that are generated automatically and your personal knowledge of the story of what happened in each of those fields this year will allow you to very quickly come to some data-driven decisions about what it is that's working and what it is that's not working on your farm, so you can quickly make better decisions, take advantage of early seed purchase discounts, and get the right hybrids, right varieties for your farm next year based on the results that you saw in the past season. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more detail about yield analysis. So one of the other things that we allow with yield analysis, in addition to the enterprise-wide stuff that we just looked at there, is we have tools that come with FieldView Plus that allow us to do subfield yield analysis. And what this does is it really empowers the running of experiments in the field so that you can figure out what practices are working on your farm and what practices are not. Basically, your entire farm should be a test plot where you're always testing different products, different practices to see what actually moves the needle and drives profitability. And unfortunately, too often, farmers don't do enough experimentation in the field because they don't have the tools to make understanding and learning about that experiment and quantifying the results easy. But with FieldView Plus, this becomes super easy to run experiments, get the results, and take the good learnings forward. So let me show you an example of this. And I'm going to go over and look here to my fields. And let me just go ahead and do, I've got a field here that a farmer in Wisconsin has shared with me that it allows me to use in these kind of demonstrations. And it's a good example of how the field region report works. So this one here is a soybean field in Wisconsin. And what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to split the screen. And this is another feature of the Climate FieldView Plus system. When you have access to Plus, you can split your screen on your iPad so you can look at two variables at the same time, side by side, and see how they work. So I'm going to go into 2018 soybeans. I'm going to pull up the planting map for this field and look at populations. And what you'll see here is this farmer was planting soybeans last year, and he was trying to find out what is the best population for these soybeans based on my farming practices, my soil types, all the things that happen in my farm area this year. And, you know, his seed guy had given him a recommendation of a population, but he wanted to see for himself what was that optimal population in his field. So he went ahead and planted a very simple experiment where he just did blocks of different population as he went through the field planting. And then at harvest, he got a yield map from his combine that looked like this. And this is the, the yield map that he got. Now, if we're trying to do yield analysis on this and try and understand, well, what was the best population this year and how did population impact yield, looking at pictures isn't going to cut it. We can't look at this and say definitively, hey, when we plant at 150,000 seeds an acre, we get 3 bushels an acre more than when we planted 125,000 seeds an acre. This picture does not give us the numbers that we need to really evaluate this trial and understand what the results were. So how would we do this trial typically? Well, we go ahead and we make these blocks in the field with the planter, and then we go out and we put some flags down in the field to mark off where those blocks were. And then we'd hope that we don't run those flags over sometime later in the season so that they're still there at harvest when we're ready to get this plot evaluated. And then we'd say at harvest, we'd say, okay, well, we got to get the weigh wagon out and we got to harvest some strips in this field and weigh them and harvest some strips and weigh them and evaluate what was my yield at my different populations. But there tend to be 2 big problems with that kind of traditional analysis that goes on with a field experiment like this. Number one, sometimes those flags get lost. We run them over when we don't have the detail of where this trial actually went in by the time we get to harvest. And number 2, a lot of times at harvest we're busy and we don't have the time we would like to stop, slow things down, get the weigh wagon out, harvest strips, weigh them, and compare and take those notes. And so too often we just have to go because weather conditions are against us, and we rush through these fields, and we try and evaluate the results of the trial by looking at the numbers on the yield monitor as we pass through the field. And that's not a very good way to really robustly analyze if a particular trial worked or what the results were. So we built some really simple tools into our system that allow you to do what you always do. Just get in the planter and plant, get in the combine and harvest, get in the sprayer and spray, and you will always have this map created that shows you where different variables were, where you changed different settings or variables, and so you don't lose them. You never have to put a flag out in the field again. And at harvest, you don't have to get the weigh wagon out ever again either, because you will get a spatial yield map here that lays on top of your planting map, and we can calculate for you numerically how things worked. And so the way this works is we just go ahead and we can draw a circle or a square or something on any of our fields and say, tell me about yield just in that part of the field. And when we draw that shape, we break down our yield by all the things we know about. And we get a report that looks like this, where it says, hey, you drew a 44.3 acre box there. It only had one variety in it. It had this particular Asgrow variety that made 72 bushels. And then we break down that yield by all the things we know about. Like, how did our yield get affected by soil type? We had 4 different soil types in there, and we can see that the Juneau silt loams didn't perform as well as some of the other soil types. But most importantly here, what we're looking for is how did population impact yield? And if I go over here to population, I can start looking at this, where it says, hey, when I planted 165,000 seeds an acre, I got 72 bushel beans. When I planted 155,000 seeds an acre, I got 72 bushel beans. When I planted 145,000, I got 71, 135,000, 71, 125,000, 73, 115,000, 72, 105,000, 72, 95,000, 70 bushel beans, and 85,000 seeds an acre, 73 bushel beans. So what these yield analysis tools do, where we can draw a shape on the field and break down our yield by all the variables that exist in that space, it makes running experiments really easy, because now I never put down a flag, I never got out the weigh wagon, but I can very easily see that pushing populations in this variety with my current farming practices, I don't get any yield bump. I always make 72 bushel beans regardless of population, whether it's 165,000 seeds an acre or 85,000 seeds an acre. And so now this farmer has learned something. He can save money on seed going forward. He does not need to be pushing populations in this variety, at least until he figures out what his limiting factor is. So now the next thing he needs to probably do is go in there and do some soil sampling, understand his pHs, his organic matter, his CEC, his P and his K levels, and see if there's something else that's stopping him from seeing any yield bump from pushing population. But for the moment, Seed populations are going to be lighter because he can see that he doesn't get any benefit currently, and he can look for what is the next thing that's impacting yield, try and fix that, and then be able to carry this experiment forward into the next year. So really cool tools here to help you understand what's happening in your field, what's driving yield, by simply drawing circles on your maps when you get done at the end of the season, where you don't have to be a super tech guy, you don't have to be an IT guy, you don't have to worry about thumb drives and pulling data. All the data is just waiting for you by using the Climate FieldView Plus system with Drive in the sprayer, in the planter, and in the tractor. Okay, let's move on from that, and let's talk about a couple other things that you get with the FieldView Plus platform, and one of them is manual scripting. So, in this case, the farmer just went ahead and he created blocks, just manually did, as he was going through the field, changed his populations. But there's a lot of times when we may know our fields pretty well, and there may be parts of the field that always perform better and parts of the field that always perform worse, and we may want to change either our seeding rate or some of our fertility practices in those parts of the field so that we're not flat rating everything in the field, and we are treating the field as the variable area that it actually is. And so we have some scripting tools in the Climate FieldView platform that make this pretty easy. Let me just show you how these work. So if I click on prescriptions, it's going to ask me which field I want to create a prescription for, and let me just go ahead and pick, let's try one for this field here. I think I have enough data in here where I can do it. But it's going to say, I want to create a prescription for this field, and it's going to ask me whether I want to create a fertility script or a planting script. In this case, I'll go ahead and create a planting script first. And this manual planting prescription is a part of the Climate FieldView Plus system. So if you have access to FieldView Plus, you can do everything that I'm about to show you here now. So I'll say I want to create a manual planting prescription. And the system's going to ask me, how do I want to create the zones in this field? And I say, I'm going to draw my own zones here. And I'll hit next. And it'll ask me, okay, about when are you going to plant and what hybrid are you going to plant? Let's just pick a hybrid here. And you can pick any hybrid. It doesn't have to be a Bayer-owned hybrid. As you can see, we have Broadbeck and Steyr and all kinds of other brands in here. But let's say I'm going to plant this particular channel variety here this year. Now, if I have a multi-hybrid planter, I can add a second hybrid to this script so that I'm actually creating a dual hybrid script in the same field where I've got a planter that can switch back and forth between an offensive and a defensive hybrid and put those in the right places. Obviously, not too many of us have multi-hybrid planters, so I'm going to stick with a single hybrid planter. I'm going to say that I'm using a starter fertilizer with it, and I'm going to say I want to finish this script. So what happens now is it brings up the field and it says, okay, as starting point, we're going to treat the entire field as a single zone. And I could say, hey, plant the entire thing at 34,000 seeds an acre, and that would be the simplest possible script. But maybe I have information about this field, about the good and the bad spots, and I want to use that to define zones in the field. Well, our manual script creator allows us to change our map and say, you know, what kind of image do I want to put into this field that I can then trace to show the regions that do actually exist here and where I want to create some of my zones. So maybe I'll come in here and I'll say, well, let's look at my 2017 yield map for corn. And I can see where my corn yielded better and worse in 2017. And I might look at that and say, yeah, that's pretty representative because I always have problems down there in that southern part of the field for whatever reason. Maybe I've got, some low-lying zones, or maybe those are sandy zones, whatever the case might be. I frequently have yield problems down there in the southern part of the field. So maybe that's an area that I want to seed lighter. Well, how do I do this? We can just go ahead and say, let's start drawing some zones using the drawing tools in the upper right-hand corner. Say I want to draw a polygon. And I'm doing this on an iPad, so it's not going to be as precise as if I had a mouse in my hand at a computer. But I can just go ahead and tap and start to trace the areas of the field where I want to plant less seed as a management zone. And so I'm going to do this kind of roughly here on my iPad, but you can see how it works in general. And I can say done. That's one of my management zones. And then maybe I want to draw another one as well. Let's say I want to say, and I've got this management zone here as well that I want to treat differently. I'll draw that roughly in. But you can create as many of these zones as you might want by drawing them manually at your computer or on your iPad. And then on the left-hand side of the page, it says, okay, well, you now have 3 different zones in this field. What planting population do you want to put to each of those? And I can say, you know what, zone 1, the main part of the field where, I get pretty good yields, I can make 220 bushel corn in this field, and I want to therefore put a population of 35,000 seeds an acre. And if I'm using liquid starter, I might say, you know what, and I want to put 3 gallons of liquid down in that main part of the field per acre. Now, zone 2, this is my poorer area. You can see it highlighted on the right-hand side of the page. This is an area where I rarely make more than 150 bushel corn. It's pretty poor performing over here, and so I don't want to put as much seed down there. I'm going to only plant 30,000 seeds an acre, and I'm also going to save on starter. I don't want my starter to go down as heavy in this part of the field, so let's put down 2 gallons here. And then I've got my zone 3. I could say, hey, this part's maybe even worse. I make 140 bushels here, and so I want to plant at 29,000 seeds an acre, and I'll still put down the 2 gallons of starter there. And just like that, in a couple of minutes, you can create a variable rate script for your planter to execute. Bottom of the page, it says that this is the average population, it's going to be 34,600. It's going to take 107 bags of seed to plant this entire field to this script. I have 3 zones, and now I'm pretty much done. So I can go ahead and hit save in the upper right-hand corner. That script is saved. If I'm planting with a 2020, it will be able to load this. It's basically saved to my iPad in the cab app, and I'll be able to load it and run it automatically. If I am planting with any other system, I would export this to a thumb drive from my computer, and when you export it, it'll ask you what kind of monitor is in the planter. So do you want to export it to an Ag Leader format, to a John Deere format, to a Case format, to a Kinsey format, to a general shapefile format, a Trimble format, whatever it might be. You can export that, take that thumb drive out to the planter, plug it in, load the script, and your planter will execute that script for you. So I showed you a planting script. You can do the same thing for fertility scripts, but we have some very easy manual scripting tools where you can pull up a map, one of the maps that you have of your fields, whether it's a soil type map, whether it's a harvest map, whether it's a biomass NDVI map from the field health, whatever map you want to use as the base, trace it to create the zones, load those scripts into your planter or your sprayer and go. And it's a great way to get started if you are maybe going into trying variable rate planting or fertility for the first time. Okay, so that is scripting. I think the last thing I'm going to cover here in terms of one of the other cool new features of the field, or actually I'll cover 2 more things. One of them, though, is remote view. And if you haven't used our system before, you haven't used remote view before, let me show you a couple of ideas. I can't show it to you live because I don't have any equipment in the field, but I can show you some quotes on Twitter about, or things on Twitter about how this works. And basically what remote view is it's a system that allows you to watch a planter or a sprayer or a combine move through the field from wherever you are. And here's just one of the Twitter videos from a few years ago where, someone is watching the planter go through the field from another location. I've used this here in California while I'm working with farmers back in Kansas or Illinois or North Dakota or whatever. As long as you have an internet connection where you are and the farmer has an internet connection in the cab where they are, you can essentially dial in to their iPad and watch live as they pass through the field. So you can see where they are in the field. You can see some of the current numbers that they're generating as they're either combining or where they are in the field when they're spraying or planting. And there's a number of different things that this can help with, obviously. You can help troubleshooting if there's a problem going on, if someone has a question, if you need to refill a guy on seed and you know where he is in the field and which field he's in, it's going to allow you to get there much more efficiently. And so it's a really interesting tool. And the nice thing about it that we've added this year is you can do remote view. It used to be that you had to have an iPad where the farmer has an iPad in the cab with them and you have an iPad at your location, then you can remote view into to watch them, assuming they give you permission. Again, it's always up to the operator of the cab to say yes or no, I'll let that person watch me. But now this year we changed it so that you can do remote view from any iPhone as well. We have a cab app available for iPhone, and so you don't need, if you're not the guy in the cab, you don't need an iPad anymore to do remote view. you can do it from any iPhone as well. And so should really expand the ability of people who maybe don't have that second iPad, but have an iPhone, to be able to look in, see where someone is in the field, check that out, get that real-time understanding of what's happening. So remote view is a really cool feature, and you see some of the other tweets here. Cool moments of the day. I was 3,305 miles from a grower's combine, remote viewing corn harvest while listening to a talk about FieldView at a conference. Or this one here, if you can't ride with Grandpa in the combine, the next best thing to do is use FieldView to remote view and watch him from the house. So, all kinds of really great testimonials to the benefits of being able to watch what's happening in the field, even if you can't be there yourself. The last thing that I'll talk about here before we wrap this up is if I go into CAB app here, one of the new things that we've added is a lot of really robust analysis tools to the CAB app itself. And so there's this analysis tab in the lower right-hand corner. And what we can do in this is we can generate reports that tell us all kinds of details about really anything that happened in our operation. And let me see if I can get one that's a little more robust. So basically, I pick a year in a crop, 2018 corn, for example, and then I can generate planting reports, application reports, yield reports, weather reports, whatever I want for any subset of my fields or my operation that I might need to share with someone. So one example is maybe I want to know the total number of gallons of each product that were applied to a certain subset of my fields that I rent from a particular landlord, because we've got a cost share arrangement on those fields. And so I need to essentially do some billing information there. So if I go over here and I say I want to look at my application report, I can go over to products, and I can say, well, these are all the products that got applied, the total number of gallons of each product that got applied, and right now it's on all my fields. But I can come in here and say filter and say, you know what, I only want to see this for either certain products, either certain application tank mixes, either maybe certain sprayers themselves on a serial number basis, which sprayers I want to get a report for, or on a client, farm, or field basis. So I can come in here and say, you know what, I only need the ones that are under default client. It'll filter this report for me, and then I can go ahead and create a PDF, and it'll create a nice report for me that I can email or print that says, hey, these are the total number of gallons, ounces of every product that was used across those farms this year that I can then use for any sort of economics conversation that I need to have with anyone else in the operation. So a lot of cool things that can be done here to generate reports of either seed from a planting perspective, chemicals from an application perspective, yield on any subset of field or the entire enterprise that I need here. So a lot of new stuff there that comes with a Climate FieldView Plus subscription as well. That said, I think that is most of what I want to go through. Again, this was just a brief overview showing you a little bit about what those features are so you understand what you get with a Climate FieldView Plus subscription. I do other webinars where we go in much more detail on how to use those features effectively, but that should give you the overview of what it is that exists in the product. Again, if anyone has any questions, let me know, but just a couple of last slides here. Again, your entire farm should be a test plot, and the features of Climate FieldView Plus allow you to make this happen. They allow you to run experiments in the field, very easily get results, never lose a trial again, and make sure that you have numbers telling you exactly what the financial benefit is of any particular practice that you are employing in the field. So you can figure out what are those things that are really making a positive difference, and those things that aren't helping, maybe leave those practices behind. As far as additional learning opportunities, I did mention my webinars. You guys found this one, but you can always go to climate.com/webinars to see the most recent list of webinars. This on the screen is not current. That's from last year. But go to climate.com/webinars, and you'll see the list of topics, times, and dates for March of 2018 or 2019. And I put up a new list every month around the start of the month. Last couple things, we're getting towards spring here, so one of the things I always want people to make sure is check your machine compatibility. We now have the ability to map using FieldView Drive lots and lots of planter combinations, lots of sprayers. You can map tillage, you can map anhydrous, you can map, now you can map choppers from silage choppers, you can map cotton pickers, you can map combines, you can map all kinds of things if you have the right adapter cable to make FieldView Drive work in the field. So if you have any questions about if your machine is going to be compatible because you want to capture as many passes through the field as you can in 2019, just call our support team at the number listed there. Talk them through what your equipment is. They'll let you know what's going to work and what's not. And most importantly, I want to make sure that everyone has the right adapter cables before you get started this spring, because sometimes the Climate FieldView Drive system, you can plug it into your tractor and it will work, but it will need an adapter cable of some sort. And just want to make sure that no one gets to spring, jumps in the planter, gets ready to start planting, and then finds out they need to order an adapter cable that's going to take a week to arrive. So get that done sooner rather than later to make sure that you are, in fact, ready for spring. If you do want to order the Plus system, you can order it online. Just log in to climate.com and when you're logged in, click the Buy button in the upper right-hand corner. When you click that Buy button, the two things that you're going to want to add to your package are going to be the Climate FieldView Plus. It's going to have a $999 price listed next to it, and you'll want to order a starter package, which has a $299 price listed next to it. When you order those, as long as you go through the workflow and you enter your Monsanto Tech ID or your Bayer Tech ID, that price will be reduced to $0 for all of the products that you've purchased. And if you need help with this, or you don't know your Tech ID, or you don't have a Tech ID and you need to get one for the first time, just call our support team. They'll walk you through the purchase process. They'll be able to do it for you and make sure that you do get this 1 year for free. Again, webinars are at climate.com/webinars. And if you have any questions, the support team is fantastic. These are people that work in agriculture. They know farming. They live and work out of our St. Louis office, and they all speak English. It's a great support system that I would recommend that you call. But if I can help you in any way, I have the very simple email address of jeff@climate.com. And I travel quite a bit. I'm not nearly as accessible as support. But if there's anything I can do to help you, I love to work with farmers and dealers around the country, and please feel free to reach out to me as well. That said, I think that's about it for today. So I think I did not see any questions come in on this in general. But if you do have questions, again, please follow up with support. Thank you for taking the time to join today, and we look forward to working with you in the 2019 season. Thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you all soon.